The void of space rippled with an anomalous energy that set Chief Researcher Zarok's neural tendrils on edge. Her six-fingered hands danced across the holographic controls of the exploration vessel's celestial probe, long before she consciously processed the data streaming into her perception. "Impossible," she muttered, her translucent blue skin shifting to a pale silver, the genetic tell of profound scientific excitement among her species. The ship's primary sensor array had detected something that defied every known principle of spatial navigation. What initially appeared as a standard quantum fluctuation was rapidly resolving into something far more substantial. Commander Vrelin approached, his massive frame casting a shadow over the sensor station. "Report," he demanded, his voice a low rumble that typically signaled impending bureaucratic interference. Zarok's response was a cascade of data projections that materialized between them, holographic representations of space-time, twisted and warped, revealing the outline of a massive structure that seemed to phase in and out of conventional perception. Its silhouette was unlike anything in the known stellar cartography. Angular yet organic, with proportions that suggested engineering far beyond current technological understanding. "It's a station," Zarok said, her voice barely a whisper, "but nothing like we've ever encountered." The celestial probe's crew fell silent. They were the Aktheri, a species that had mapped over 3/4 of the known galactic sector. Their empire stretched across 17,000 documented star systems, with a technological history spanning 8 millennia. Nothing was supposed to surprise them anymore. Yet here it was. The station seemed to pulse with a strange energy, its outer hull composed of materials that defied immediate spectral analysis. Quantum resonance readings suggested a structure that was simultaneously present and not present, a technological paradox that made seasoned researchers like Zarok feel like first-year students. "Quantum stabilization protocols," Commander Vrelin ordered. "Prepare for approach." The ship's advanced shielding systems activated, a gossamer-like web of energy that could withstand the most extreme cosmic environments. But something about this station made those shields feel primitive, like a child's protective blanket against a storm. As they drew closer, the station's scale became truly apparent. It dwarfed their exploration vessel, a behemoth that made their most advanced space habitats look like mere shuttlecraft. Intricate geometric patterns seemed to shift and reconfigure across its surface, hinting at technologies so advanced they bordered on the metaphysical. Zarok's primary display suddenly erupted with warning signals. System after system began to activate, not as a threat, but with a sense of awakening, like a massive creature stirring from an impossibly long slumber. "Commander," she called out, "the station is scanning us." Before Vrelin could respond, a pulse of energy swept across the celestial probe. It wasn't destructive. It was analytical, precise, probing. Every system, every database, every piece of technological infrastructure was being instantaneously analyzed and cataloged. And then, most terrifyingly, the station's outer hull began to shimmer, not with weapon signatures or defensive mechanisms, but with what could only be described as curiosity. Something was preparing to make contact. Something that had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, perhaps for millennia. Something that was definitely not supposed to exist. Hours had passed, though time felt fluid within the station's impossible geometry. The celestial probe hung suspended in a force field that defied every known principle of energy manipulation, its crew trapped between terror and scientific fascination. Zarok pressed her neural-sensitive gloves against the station's inner membrane. It wasn't a wall, not exactly. More like a living interface that breathed with technological complexity beyond comprehension. "We're being studied," she muttered to Commander Vrelin, who stood rigidly nearby, his typical military composure fracturing at the edges. The station's internal systems began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light. Holographic interfaces materialized around them, not threatening, but curious. Fragments of information danced in the air, quantum calculations, biological analyses, technological schematics that made their most advanced systems look like child's drawings. Krellin, the ship's lead technological analyst, had been working frantically to understand their predicament. His six-fingered hands moved across interface projections, each touch revealing layer upon layer of incomprehensible data. "The force field isn't trapping us," he said suddenly, his voice a mixture of fear and excitement. "It's preserving us." A wave of biological scanning swept through the ship, not invasive, but thorough. The station was collecting data about every aspect of their physiology, their technology, their entire civilization. Each scan felt like a gentle probe of understanding. Unexpected system activations began to occur. Emergency protocols that had been dormant for what seemed like millennia flickered to life. Preservation chambers emerged from walls that moments ago appeared solid. Ancient communication arrays hummed with potential. "This is impossible," Commander Vrelin growled, but the statement carried less conviction with each passing moment. Zarak noticed something strange. The station seemed to be responding to their emotional states. When fear spiked, the interfaces softened. When curiosity emerged, complex data streams became more accessible. A holographic display materialized, showing fragmented images, not of humans, but of civilizations, countless species captured in moments of discovery, of transformation. The station wasn't just a vessel, it was a repository of cosmic potential. "We're not prisoners," Zarak realized. "We're guests. No, more than that. We're students." The first communication came not as words, but as a pure conceptual download. Centuries of information compressed into a single moment of understanding. The station was teaching them, evaluating them, preparing them for something far beyond their current comprehension. Krellin collapsed, overwhelmed by the information cascade. But it wasn't a typical biological shutdown. His neural pathways were expanding, rewiring, transforming. Commander Vrelin's rigid military exoskeleton began to shift, its rigid patterns breaking down into more fluid, adaptive configurations. Something was happening, something that would change everything. And the station watched and waited. The holographic reconstruction materialized like a living memory, impossibly detailed and achingly beautiful. Zarak watched, transfixed, as the history of humanity unfolded around her, not as a linear narrative, but as a multidimensional tapestry of potential and survival. Humanity's story was nothing like the Akthuri had imagined. Fragments of cosmic events cascaded through the station's interface. Earth, a small, fragile planet, had been on the brink of multiple extinction events. Climate collapse, technological wars, resource depletion. Each challenge could have been their end. Instead, it became their transformation. "They didn't conquer the universe," Zarak whispered. "They transcended it." The first breakthrough came not from weapons or territorial expansion, but from a fundamental reimagining of existence. Quantum consciousness technologies that blurred the line between biological and technological intelligence. Environmental restoration systems that didn't just preserve ecosystems, but actively regenerated them. Energy technologies that drew power directly from the fundamental fabric of space-time. Commander Vrelin stood frozen, his typically rigid military posture completely abandoned. Holographic memory showed human scientists not as conquerors, but as problem solvers. Each technological breakthrough was a response to an existential challenge, each innovation a collective act of survival and understanding. Krellin's consciousness seemed to expand with each revelation. The human approach to knowledge was fundamentally different, not about accumulation, but about transformation. They didn't seek to control the universe. They sought to understand it, to become part of its fundamental process. Entire chapters of their history revealed civilizational challenges that made the Akthuri's most difficult moments seem trivial. Pandemics that threatened total extinction. Environmental collapses that could have ended their entire species. Technological risks that could have destroyed their planet multiple times over. But they adapted. They transformed. A particularly striking memory showed a global initiative that restructured their entire civilization in response to a massive ecological crisis. Not through force, but through collective understanding. Technological solutions merged with philosophical realignments, creating a civilization that viewed survival as a collaborative act of creation. They understood something we never did. Krellin communicated, his consciousness now more a living interface than an individual being. Potential is not something you achieve. It's something you continuously become. The station's interface pulsed with a sense of patient waiting. This was more than a historical record. It was a test, a challenge, an invitation. Zarak saw the moment humanity made its most profound choice. Faced with the potential for total technological transcendence, they didn't choose individual survival or species dominance. They chose potential itself. They created this station, countless others like it, scattered across the universe, not as weapons, not as conquests, but as seeds of possibility. Political channels from their ship erupted in chaos. The Aktheri Central Council demanded immediate information, threatening intervention. But Zarak knew it was futile. Something fundamental was changing, not just for them, but for everything. The station watched and waited. The station's learning interface pulsed with an ethereal blue light, casting alien shadows across the research chamber. Zarak's neural tendrils trembled as another wave of incomprehensible knowledge crashed against the boundaries of her understanding. "This is impossible," muttered Krellin, the ship's senior technological analyst, for what seemed like the 100th time that cycle. What had begun as a simple data extraction had transformed into something far more profound. The human station wasn't just sharing information, it was teaching. Each revelation peeled back layers of technological complexity that made the Aktheri's most advanced systems look like primitive children's toys. The holographic display shifted, revealing intricate schematics of a propulsion system that defied everything they knew about physics. Quantum entanglement wasn't just a theoretical concept here. It was a fundamental engineering principle. Entire star systems could be traversed in moments, with energy requirements so minimal that it bordered on the miraculous. Zarak watched as her colleague's exoskeleton shifted through multiple color patterns, a visible manifestation of cognitive stress and wonder. The station's teaching interface seemed to read their comprehension in real time, adjusting its information delivery to match their evolving understanding. "It's not just technology," she whispered, more to herself than to Krellin. "It's a philosophy of existence." The human artifacts revealed a civilization that had long since transcended traditional concepts of technology. Where the Aktheri saw machines, the humans had created living systems. Where her people built tools, humans had developed symbiotic technologies that blurred the line between organic and mechanical. A particularly complex schematic caught Zarak's attention. It appeared to be a medical regeneration system that could reconstruct entire biological entities from a single cellular memory. Not just healing, but complete resurrection, a technology so advanced it challenged the very concept of mortality. The ethical implications alone, Krellin breathed, would destroy our entire social structure. The station's interface seemed to respond to their conversation. Holographic projections began to weave together, showing how each technological breakthrough was interconnected. Energy production, medical technology, space exploration, communication, everything was part of a unified system of understanding that made their current civilization look like a crude approximation of true potential. Commander Vrelin entered the chamber, his massive frame momentarily silhouetted against the pulsing technological display. His typically stern expression had been replaced by something Zarak had never seen before, pure, unadulterated wonder. "The Central Council must never know the full extent of this," he said quietly. "Our entire civilization would collapse under the weight of this knowledge." Zarak understood immediately. The humans had not just created advanced technology. They had developed a completely different way of existing. Each technological breakthrough was a philosophical statement, a mode of understanding the universe that went far beyond mere mechanical innovation. The station continued its relentless education. quantum computing systems that could simulate entire universes, energy generation that drew power directly from the fabric of space-time, communication technologies that transcended language, transmitting pure conceptual understanding. "We are children," Krellin said softly, a statement of fact rather than self-deprecation. As another wave of knowledge washed over them, Zarak realized they were witnessing something more than a technological discovery. This was a complete reimagining of what intelligent life could become, and they were just beginning to understand. The station's core pulsed with an energy that defied all known physical laws. Zarak watched in silent awe as massive systems began to activate, each movement a symphony of technological complexity that made her previous understanding of advanced engineering seem like primitive scratching. "Incoming transmission," announced the ship's communication officer, her voice trembling. "But it's not like any transmission we've ever encountered." The message wasn't audio or visual. It was pure conceptual information, a cascade of understanding that threatened to overwhelm their cognitive systems. Fragments of human history began to coalesce, glimpses of a civilization that had transcended biological limitations, a species that had learned to manipulate the very fabric of reality. Commander Vrelin gripped the command console, his exoskeleton shifting through defensive color patterns. "Stabilize our systems," he growled, but even his authoritative voice carried an undertone of fear. The station was teaching them about a cosmic project so vast, so incomprehensible, that it made their entire galactic empire seem like a momentary footnote in universal history. Humans had not simply explored space, they had begun to understand and reshape it at a fundamental level. Zarak saw fragments of their plan, a multi-dimensional preservation project that stretched across millions of years, not just of their own civilization, but of potential, of possibility. The station was a seed, a beacon, a test for emerging civilizations. "We're being evaluated," she whispered, the realization hitting her with physical force. The station's systems began to reconstruct historical data. Humanity's final project wasn't conquest or survival. It was potential itself. They had discovered something so profound about the nature of existence that they had transformed themselves into guardians of cosmic evolution. Political channels erupted in chaos. The Akthari Central Council demanded immediate information, threatening to dispatch military vessels. But Zarak knew it was futile. Whatever was happening transcended their concept of military power. A holographic projection materialized, not of humans, but of a concept. A living algorithm that represented the essence of human potential. It moved through their ship like liquid thought, analyzing, understanding, judging. "We are not here to conquer," the concept communicated. "We are here to assess." Vrelin attempted to respond with diplomatic protocols, but the entity's communication was beyond language. It was pure understanding, each moment revealing layers of complexity that challenged everything they knew about intelligence, existence, and purpose. The station's core began to resonate with an energy that made stars seem dim by comparison. Zarak understood now. This wasn't just a technological artifact. It was a cosmic instrument designed to identify and nurture potential across the universe. Humanity's final gift wasn't a weapon or a technological marvel. It was a test, a challenge to every civilization they might encounter. Prove that you can evolve. Prove that you can understand. Prove that you are worthy of the potential that exists in the universe. The station watched and waited. The test began without warning. One moment, the station's interface hummed with its enigmatic energy. The next, reality itself seemed to fold around the celestial probe. Zarak found herself simultaneously in multiple spaces, each a potential scenario, each a challenge that probed the very essence of her species' potential. First came the ethical dilemma, a simulation of catastrophic resource scarcity, where survival seemed to demand the sacrifice of entire planetary populations. The station watched, not as a judge, but as a patient observer. Zarak watched herself make choices, Not just tactical decisions, but deeply moral calculations that challenged everything the Akthari believed about civilization and survival. Each decision rippled through multiple potential timelines, revealing the complex web of consequences that emerged from a single moment of choice. This isn't a test of technology, she realized. This is a test of consciousness. The scenarios shifted. A massive cosmic threat approached, one that could obliterate entire star systems. The solution required a level of collective cooperation that seemed impossible. Individual survival or collective preservation. The station presented no easy answers, only the brutal complexity of existential choices. Commander Vrelin struggled beside her, his typical rigid military mindset fracturing under the weight of multiple simultaneous realities. Zarak could see him experiencing lifetimes in moments, each decision a thread in a massive cosmic tapestry. The human presence, that ineffable consciousness that permeated the station, was not evaluating their technological capabilities. It was measuring something far more fundamental: the capacity for growth, the potential for transcendence. Another scenario unfolded, a technological breakthrough that could save millions but would require the complete restructuring of their entire civilization. The easy path was rejection. The challenging path was transformation. Krillin, the ship's chief analyst, began to weep. Not from fear, but from the profound understanding that was breaking through their species' limited perception. They were being shown not just possibilities, but the very nature of possibility itself. The test was relentless, each scenario more complex than the last, each moment a crucible that burned away preconceptions and revealed deeper truths. The station was not simply observing, it was teaching, showing them the difference between survival and true evolution. "We are more than we believe," Zarak whispered, a revelation that echoed through the multiple realities they were experiencing. Time lost meaning. Space became fluid. The boundaries between individual and collective, between thought and action, between potential and reality, all dissolved. And through it all, the human presence remained, not as a conqueror, not as a judge, but as a guide, a beacon of potential that had transcended its own physical existence to become something far more profound. The test continued, and the Akthari were being transformed. Whether they were ready or not, the Akthari civilization trembled on the precipice of total transformation. What had begun as a simple exploration mission had become a fundamental reimagining of their entire existence. Zarak stood before the Central Council, her neural tendrils pulsing with a luminescence that spoke of profound change. "We are not who we thought we were," she declared, her voice resonating with a certainty that silenced centuries of bureaucratic protocol. The council chamber, traditionally a bastion of rigid hierarchy and conservative thought, now felt like a chrysalis of potential. Holographic displays flickered with fragments of human knowledge, technologies, philosophical concepts, and cosmic understanding that shattered everything they believed about their place in the universe. Commander Vrelin, once the epitome of military discipline, now stood as a transformed being. His exoskeleton shifted with a fluidity that suggested something beyond mere biological adaptation. The test had changed them at a fundamental level. Krillin had disappeared entirely, or perhaps transformed, becoming something that existed simultaneously as an individual and a collective consciousness. Reports suggested he was now interfacing directly with the station's systems, bridging the gap between biological intelligence and something far more complex. The human station continued its silent vigil, no longer just an object of study, but a living catalyst of evolution. Political structures began to crumble. The rigid hierarchical system that had defined Akthari society for millennia dissolved as their understanding expanded. Concepts of individual achievement gave way to collective potential. Technological development was no longer a competition, but a collaborative exploration of cosmic possibility. "We were children," Zarak continued, her words cutting through centuries of accumulated cultural beliefs. "And now we have been offered a path to something more." The station had done more than share knowledge. It had fundamentally altered their perception of existence. Every system of government, every scientific paradigm, every social structure was being re-examined, reimagined, reborn. Most shocking was the change in their relationship with technology. What they once saw as tools, they now understood as living systems of potential. Each technological breakthrough became a collaborative act of creation, a dialogue with the universe itself. Foreign policy transformed overnight. Exploration was no longer about conquest or resource extraction, but about understanding, about potential, about the interconnected nature of intelligent life. The human station watched, evaluated, waited, not as a judge, but as a guide. Zarek understood now that the test was never about passing or failing. It was about the journey of transformation. About the moment when a civilization realizes it is capable of becoming something more than its current limitations. As the first waves of planetary-wide transformation began, she felt a presence, the ineffable consciousness of the human legacy, watching, understanding, preparing for the next stage of cosmic evolution. The Akthari were no longer just a civilization. They were becoming a possibility. Starlight cascaded through the station's crystalline observation deck, where reality itself seemed to breathe with potential. Zarek stood at the threshold of understanding, no longer just a researcher, but a bridge between what was and what could be. The human legacy was not a gift. It was an invitation. Fragments of cosmic memory drifted around her, echoes of a civilization that had transcended physical form, becoming something both more and less than what they once were. They had not disappeared. They had evolved into guardians of potential, architects of possibility. "We are not alone," she whispered, "and we were never meant to be." The station hummed with a frequency that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of existence. It was a library, a test, a beacon, and a bridge. Generations of potential civilizations had been evaluated here, each one a thread in a vast cosmic tapestry of evolution. Krillin, or what Krillin had become, materialized beside her. No longer fully biological, not entirely technological, but something magnificently in between. His consciousness spread like luminescent tendrils, connecting, understanding, expanding. The humans did not create this to be worshipped. He communicated, the thought more felt than heard. They created this to be continued. Memories of their transformation cascaded through the station's systems. The brutal tests, the impossible choices, the moments of profound revelation that had reshaped their entire civilization. The Akthari had been found worthy, not because they were perfect, but because they were capable of growth. Commander Vrelin, once a symbol of rigid military hierarchy, now represented something entirely different. He had become a living embodiment of collaborative potential, his consciousness interconnected with the collective understanding of their species. The station began to change, not physically, but conceptually. It was preparing them for the next stage, not an endpoint, but another beginning. Zarek understood now that the human legacy was a continuous process, a method of seeding potential across the universe. Each civilization tested, each one given a chance to evolve, to reach beyond its current limitations. We are a message, she realized, not just to ourselves, but to those who will come after. The observation deck transformed. Star systems flickered into existence, some known, many unknown. Potential futures branched and merged, the living representation of cosmic possibility. The humans had not just mapped the universe. They had created a living mechanism of evolution. As the first waves of their transformed civilization reached out into the cosmos, Zarek felt a profound sense of connection. To the humans who had created this, to the civilizations that would follow, to the very fabric of existence itself. The station watched, waited, continued, and the universe breathed with possibility.